Ann Klotz, the head of school at Laurel, has a line, and I always like to give credit. She says of the spring, it's as if there are 100 days of May. And I think that applies now to late April, between games, meetings that you have to attend, events. I know how quickly it adds up. And so I'm deeply grateful to all of you for making time on a Tuesday night to be here to look forward to the fall. So thank you very much. I'm excited this evening to lead off what we're very excited for being the 135th season of University School Football. And I think it's fitting that our seniors chose a slogan that in many ways embodies a key component of what our program has been. And that's a very close-knit group of young men who train and compete together. And they chose the slogan Brotherhood. And I'm going to steal a line from one of my fellow coaches. It's actually my dad who works with our freshmen. And a few years ago, he made a comment to the freshman team. Yes, you put the slogan on a t-shirt. Yes, you repeat it over and over again. But really the task of a team is to make the slogan true. That if you just have the slogan and your day-to-day doesn't back it up, that's a problem. And I think when you put a slogan up on a screen as the basis of your team, what you're really saying is this is the goal that we intend to achieve. And so what a great goal to set. What a wonderful way to set that bar and work toward achieving it. So I'm really excited to share some thoughts on our program this evening. I am aware that there's a Cavs playoff game, and it has been pointed out to me that I should maybe keep it a little briefer than a banquet speech. Maybe. This just works. It's not up there, Coach. It's at the podium there. Hey, Coop, go over there and just hit forward. Thanks. It's at the podium right there. Thank you. Oh, well. As for agenda tonight, I'd like to spend a few minutes on our mission as a program just to set some expectations. We will talk a little bit about our calendar, and obviously I think that's a main item to highlight as we go forth in the summer and obviously looking forward to the fall. Coach Alvarez will speak on training, and then I'm going to talk a little bit at the end about parent involvement and hopefully answer a few questions that you might have. At the end of the evening, I'm going to keep freshman families for 5 to 8 minutes after and go through a few items that are specific to freshman families and also anticipate that you might have some questions that may not apply to everyone else. And that leads to the real purpose of this evening. One conversation I had last fall reminded me that we used to always have these meetings before COVID. We'd gotten away from them, and someone asked me a question. I'm like, how do you not know that? And then I realized there was no time at which we'd covered it. And so that is the other reason for being here tonight, that opportunity to be together, go through some things that are important in our program, and hopefully set some baseline expectations. Coop, if you'd go to the next slide, that'd be great. We say in our program that our mission is to develop young men who prepare and train to compete to be champions. And I think it's really important that we understand what that means. Football is a process. A really outstanding university school teacher and coach, Dr. Bill O'Neill, won multiple Gulf State titles, was an outstanding track coach, was a head of the upper school. He had an outstanding statement about coaching at US. And I think it actually applies to much more than coaching. He said, successful coaches at university school have an irrational belief in the importance of what they do. And I completely agree with him. Where I would extend what he says is to add successful programs involve young men, families who share a passionate belief in the importance of what they do. We believe university school football matters. We believe it's an opportunity to work hard, to compete against challenging competition, and to be in a part and an experience in one's life where it doesn't always go well. Right? I'm a very competitive person. The seniors and juniors and sophomores in this room have proven to be very competitive young men. I have assistant coaches who work very hard. They all like to win. Everyone in this room enjoys it. And one of the great things about football, though, is that it tests us in many ways. And you go up against other competition that works just as hard, cares just as much, and then sometimes they do it a little bit better and you have to improve. Sometimes you do it a little bit better and you help them improve. That's the beauty of competition. And so when we say it's a process-related sport, it's so much about making sure that process is as outstanding as it can possibly be. I would add to that point, it's also a team process. You prepare and train to compete to become champions together. That's a little bit unique, right? We all know outstanding swimmers. We know outstanding runners, right? I have sons who've swam. We know outstanding squash players, outstanding golfers, right? And there is an incredible discipline to being an individual athlete. And doing it together is a whole different quality of experience. And I think that's a really important part of U.S. football. And that leads to another element. We want this to be the best team experience any of us have ever had. And when I say any of us, that goes for parents. Obviously, it goes for players. It goes for coaches. We want everyone involved in the program to feel great about being part of a team because we know there's nothing better than that feeling when it's successfully done. The last thing I will say, and it's echoing just a point I made, part of this is success and failure. Learn to win with some humility and lose with dignity. And hopefully work on having a lot more humility than dignity. But I really believe that that's part of this process. Your son at some point is going to fail in this program. He's going to be in the weight room this summer, and Coach Alvarez is going to push him, and he's not going to get the weight. Okay? There might be a moment when he doesn't get the position he wants. He doesn't have the playing time he wants. Or even if your son is the best player in the program, a moment when he goes up against someone who's a little bit better. That's a wonderful opportunity to learn how to work hard and do it a little bit better the next time. And so I just think it's important that we have that mindset as we go. Coach, if you go to the next slide, I appreciate it. I will send out another edition of the updated calendar. I thought it better to talk about it rather than have you looking at it as we were speaking tonight. So I will send out an updated edition. It's very similar to the edition you have seen already. And I just want to hit some highlights. First of all, highlights between now and the end of the school year, right? We have almost 80% of our roster playing a spring sport, and that is something we are very proud of. Hey, obviously, if your son's playing a spring sport, that's his athletic focus right now. If your son's not playing a spring sport, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, workouts after school. Okay? And the idea is that's your opportunity to train. If you're in season, obviously, and Coach Alvarez is going to speak more about this, you're getting your training with your team. That's not my concern. Okay? The point being, if you are out of season, you should be getting your workouts in. Sundays we have skill work, and that is an available opportunity. It's not mandatory. The state changed some rules, and so we've been doing some 7-on-7 stuff, which is fun for the skill guys. And the reality is 7-on-7 isn't real football. It's fun. People enjoy it. It's great. But eventually it becomes 4th and 1, and you have to run off tackle. So we love that we get to have that opportunity on Sundays, and we certainly welcome everyone to be involved. Our linemen get skill work as well with our coaches, and they are great opportunities to develop. But again, if you have a lacrosse match on Monday, you shouldn't be competing on a Sunday. Now, there is a difference, and let's call this to be clear. a varsity lacrosse game on a Tuesday. If you got a JV lacrosse game on a Tuesday and you want to come to Sunday skill work, please do. I just think there's a major difference in those expectations. As we get to June and July, our biggest event in June is our mini camp the first week of June, the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, and the 6th. We are here, we're in the evenings, we meet at 4, we do meetings up at the school, we transfer down to the field, then at the field we have a practice, and generally we finish up about 8:15, 8:30. It's 4 days, and let me clarify just so that we're absolutely no ambiguity on this. My expectation is that if you're a varsity lacrosse player, you won't be here that week. You should be competing for a state title. Unfortunately, the way the summer schedule worked, and including my own schedule, that was the only week we could do this and succeed. So if we lose a few guys for varsity lacrosse state championship, that's a good thing that I'm excited to have happen. So those days. Now, 8th graders who are coming into 9th grade, we'll have a conversation in a moment about your expectations that week. So let's save that for after. But that first week is very important for the rest of us. For the rest of June and most of July, our primary focus is training in the weight room. We go Monday through Thursday. We meet at 6:30 every morning. On Mondays, Wednesdays, and most Thursdays, we meet up here. On Tuesdays, we meet at the field because on Tuesdays, we do a little bit more of a skill focus, and our coaches actually do some football training. So that's the plan. What's the expectation on workouts? Let's make certain that's something everyone understands. I hope you have a chance to go on a vacation this summer. I hope you have time to be away with your family. Hopefully it's not too long. But I also will say, my expectation is if you're in town and available, you're at workouts. We go at 6:30, in part because it's good to get up in the morning and get going in the summer. But the other part of the 6:30 workout is that it's a great way to avoid summer jobs, internships that we know many of our students have. One of our seniors who's graduating right now did two full summers in a lab at Case researching cancer. He was also at every workout for 2 summers, those summers. So the idea is that you can do this and be able to manage the other things that you're trying to accomplish in the summer, similar to summer classes as well. Any questions on June and July? At the end of July, we do a 3-day team camp at Oberlin. I'm still finalizing some details there. Oberlin was where we went last year. It was a great site for team camp. And that's 3 days, 2 nights. The team stays together. We welcome freshmen too, not required, but we certainly welcome them to be there. And that's a really important team building event for us. We do a lot of work installing, prepping for what we do in season at Oberlin. So that's a very important part of what we do. Okay. Coop, if you would extend. As we get into the season, our doubles start the Monday after team camp. This year, that's Monday, July 29th. The state of Ohio makes it really awkward in terms of the way they organize days. They used to say it was always August 1st, and now it's never August 1st. So we start on the 29th, and 2-a-days follow a pretty consistent schedule. We meet at 3, normally up here. We either do film or we lift, depending on the day and Coach Alvarez's schedule. We then practice from 4 to 6, take a short break. We come back on and we practice from about 6:50 to about 8:15, 8:20. Sometimes it becomes 8:30. The freshmen are normally out a few minutes earlier, and the varsity are normally going until about 8:15, 8:30. That's the double schedule. When we get to game week, and that begins, and my eyes are now aging, that begins Monday, August 19th. I hope I'm reading that correctly. Good. Monday, August 19th, we have game week schedules. That's when doubles end, and we focus on getting ready for our first week opponent, Geneva. I will note, Mondays we normally lift and practice. Tuesdays is our pretty hard work day. Wednesdays we lift and practice, and it's a little tighter in terms of the practice schedule. And then Thursdays are always a very short varsity practice. We're almost always off the field before 5 o'clock. Freshmen have a slightly different schedule, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Scrimmages, obviously games, all part of it. And when you get the package tonight on the email, it'll have the schedule, it will have the calendar, so it's all laid out. It's very consistent with what many of you have already seen in draft calendars. I would say a word about college visits, and I realize that's more of a rising senior issue, but I think it's important to cover and for everyone to hear it. Look, having a senior daughter right now myself, I know how important it is for your sons to get to where they need to be in the process. And obviously that is an important priority of senior year. My request is that you look at the schedule, and that if you're trying to do a date when your son needs to be gone on a Monday, which is the ideal day to do it, that you're looking at the schedule, and I will highlight a few Mondays that are ideal college visit days on that calendar. It is not a good idea for your son, for me, for anyone, for any of our sanities, if your son is out the Monday before we play Gilmore, okay? Or a playoff game or whatever it is. And that's why try to pay attention to the schedule. Here's the reality. Not every week is the same. Every week is an opportunity to compete, but not every week is the same. And recognizing that is important as you look at those elements of planning. Any questions on calendar? Good. I do want to introduce several coaches who are here tonight before I transition to Coach Alvarez. First of all, as many of you know, I am very fortunate. The person who puts more into this program than anyone in this room in so many ways, as defensive coordinator, as assistant head coach, taking care of every detail you could possibly imagine, is Coach Kennedy. For those of you who don't know, Coach Kennedy is also our head track coach and also our freshman basketball coach. And I've been very fortunate to have him with me going on 10 years here at University School and even 2 years before that. Coach Alvarez is right there next to him. So give a wave, and I'll be introducing him in a moment. He's our head of sport performance. He is the reason why we are able to compete at the level we do. The work he does with your sons in the weight room is amazing. And what's even more important is the fact that it compounds because he's always working with all our teams. And so that consistency of training is throughout your son's experience here, and it doesn't vary from one sport to the next. Coach Henderson coaches our linebackers. We've been fortunate to have him. This will be his third season with us. Coach Gerace, who's right next to him, is our offensive coordinator and coaches our quarterbacks. Coach Malbassa Sr. coaches our freshmen, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to freshmen. Coach Cooper Allison, is in the back. Coach worked with our freshmen last year and will be working with our receivers this year. And am I missing any coaches? Oh, and Coach Ryan, who's our trainer, who's amazing and does such a great job of taking care of us, and I appreciate him being here tonight also. Did I miss anyone who's here as coaches? I was scanning. Good. All right. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Coach Alvarez to say a few words about training for football, and then I'm going to come back on with some parent details, and we'll wrap up. Thank you.
I don't have a slide, but I wanted to just say two things, right? How many eighth graders do we have, eighth grade parents, eighth grade kids in the moment? Okay, so let me give you an example of how my day goes every day. Imagine I'm teaching AP Physics. I have 1 year to get everybody ready, and in the same room I have pre-algebra, geometry, pre-calc, cal, and AP Calculus. Think about that. What that means is I have an eighth grader, a ninth grader, a 10th grader, an 11th grader, and a 12th grader all trying to train to win a championship this year, right? So when I tell young kids, be patient, there's a reason for that, right? And the reason why I say that is I say Oliver Thomas is not here today, but I was pulling old testing cards from our athletes from 4 years ago. Oliver Thomas showed up and he was 130 pounds. He benched 135 and he had like an 8-inch vertical. I looked at his card from the end of the year, and he was weighing 205 with a plus 300 bench, a plus 400 deadlift, and had an amazing year. So you're going to hear a lot from your kid as he comes in 8th grade into 9th grade. I'm not lifting this. I'm not allowed to do this. There's a reason for that, right? For the simple fact that when you look at that schedule, I have 6 weeks to get 70-plus guys ready to make a chase to the regional final. So the 8th grader coming into 9th grade normally isn't the humongous priority they might feel they are right away, because it's me and Coop, 70 guys in the room, and maybe 20 freshmen, incoming freshmen. So the reason why I say that is because from an athlete's perspective, and every senior here will tell you, there were more no's than yes that first summer, because I have to make sure that they survive summer, right? In the weight room, what you're going to tend to see is a college-level program. The conditioning, the speed, the agility, the weights, the high percentages, the intensity for an hour and a half. I have 6 weeks to get you ready for Oberlin. Then we go into doubles. Then we go into the season. So the reason I say that is that the goal for a freshman is not the summer. The goal of the freshman is the freshman season, right? Because for 6 weeks, we teach foundation. Then during doubles, we teach technique, we teach methodology, right? We teach terminology, and then we teach the card and percentages. So as they progress through the whole year of freshman year, they're going to be at their best come spring, right? Because it takes me a while. It's difficult to say to a kid that has never been in our program, here's a max deadlift, I want you at 82%, and you got to give me 8 sets of 2. That's overwhelming, right? Because as young boys, what you're going to find out, everybody wants to be the alpha. So you put them in a weight room with 20 seniors that have been banging weights for 4 years, they're lifting heavy. So if you're an 8th grader coming in the 9th grade, you're going to think, well, I want to be there. I've done this before. That's not the priority. Because what we figured out in my 9 years at St. Xavier High School and my 6th year here is that if you survive freshman year injury-free, you have a really, really good chance of surviving 4 years. The other thing we've noticed is if you try to go too heavy with weights and intensity freshman year, you get to skip some things because you're trying to get so far up that you suffer sophomore year, right? So my goal in saying this is I am a slow cooker. Doesn't matter how great you are 8th grade and coming in the 9th grade. If we have a 9th grade starting on varsity, we have an issue. And I know Coach Benabasa doesn't normally like me saying that, but the reality is I've been in enough championship teams in football to know that if we have freshmen starting varsity that year, we're not very good. So I want patience from the kids, number one. Number two, know that I have your best interest in mind as a parent because I had a kid that played here for 4 years, right? So I always start with that because everybody's gung-ho about starting, but really this year only we have 6 weeks, which is less than we've ever had, right? And we go into 6 weeks into camp, 2 days off, into doubles, 2 weeks, and we go into games. So the schedule's really compressed this year. So the intensity is going to be wild, boys. You know what I'm saying? Match my intensity kind of thing. So that's the first thing. Please be patient in 8th graders coming into 9th grade because I have your best interest, but no, the jumps over 4 years, think about it. 100 workouts a year. We lift about 10 to 15,000 pounds of workout. That's millions of pounds lifted over 4 years. I mean, to say OT gained over 100, almost 100 pounds is amazing, right? So I just want you to be patient. Same thing. I'm going to get a lot of 9th graders that will show up, and I don't even really talk about upperclassmen because you know what I'm all about. But it's normally the 9th graders that we have to be very patient, right? They have to be assessed. They're going to be put in a small group. They're going to go through the basic block 0 card. They're going to have to go through some of the speed, agility, and conditioning, and that's another concern, right? Because what you're going to find out from a lot of freshmen is they've never done 16 half-gassers, right? They've never done agility sessions with 5, 6, 7 stations of 4 minutes apiece. So, yes, can everybody come in and do it? Yes. Will people get tweaked out? Yes. Will people get plugged, sore? It's going to be more common than you might think, right? So, really, I'm not really here to say much about the upperclassmen, but it's those freshmen that are sophomores now. They know how it was. No, 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 I can't. That's not the goal. The goal is a 4-year process where your son goes through about 400 workouts over a 4-year span, right? And we progressively overload, meaning that every day we come in, I want you either 1 rep better or 5 pounds heavier, right? After 10 weeks, that's a 50-pound increase in strength. So from my perspective, I'm here to help every single kid have an injury-free, successful career with an amazing experience where they get better every day, right? If you're not going to show up or you show up late, I have a philosophy. I don't want to hear no excuses, no explanations. We expect everybody there to show up before the assigned time, right? We're going to go hard for an hour and a half. We're going to get a break, and then we ask everybody to focus on their nutrition, right? And I know that kids hear this all the time from me, but the quality sleep, the quality hydration, the quality food, the quality recovery, right? All that will be critical as we go through a 6-week cycle. I think in cycles, right? I got 6 weeks. We got to get this much percentage, this much strength, this much speed, this much agility, and then be ready for camp, unload, focus on fundamentals, then pick it up to doubles again. So there's so many things that go on, and a lot of what we do is workload management. So that's why I'm really concerned sometimes about freshmen that are gung-ho thinking they're going to start on varsity. All right, so that's not my goal. My goal is to get you to survive freshman year, have a really successful time, and then plug along in the off season, sophomore year, right? And then if you do that, we've seen gains, as you can tell, from 25 pounds a year to over 100 pounds over 4 years. That's super doable, right? But we got to survive that freshman year, okay? Any questions for me? Anyone? I look forward to working with every single one of you. We're on a mission, boys, the brotherhood, huh?
I would just echo one really important point that Coach made. You know, he pointed out if you're doing it right, it's 400 workouts over 4 years. Everyone has things that come up, right? If it starts to come up often and you go 2 months that aren't very purposeful, you're not in season and maybe you're drifting a little bit and you're not getting the workouts that you need, you miss out on some of those 400 opportunities. And where coaches' work is so valuable is when it compounds day after day. And that's also where you build that connection to your teammates. As important as the weight room is for the strength that's gained, it's also the time together that matters. So I think on all fronts, we're very fortunate to have Coach Alvarez leading that aspect of our program, and it's been a huge part of our success. I'm going to turn to another aspect of our program, and that's really where parents in the room come into play. You know, we have the Rehacks here tonight, and you know, obviously Brad was on one of my first teams almost 10 years ago now, and so they've seen the evolution. And when I came back 10 years ago, there were 33 kids playing football, 9 through 12. And we had 4 freshmen the first year. And we were really fortunate. We had some very enthusiastic students who got classmates to come out. And we had seniors coming out for football. You know, so a year later, after having 35 guys by the time the season started, you know, the next year we were probably in the high 40s and started to be able to play some JV freshman games. And then we kind of hovered in the mid to high 50s for a stretch. And even in COVID, when we struggled a little bit, we still kept adding players to the program to the point now that we have about 70 young men in the program. And I say that because there are a few things that have come out of it that are really awesome and yet a little bit of a challenge. On the really awesome category, we play 3 levels of football. A freshman, JV, varsity. And I think, you know, we have some guys in this room last year who on some other teams might have been starters on a varsity team. And last year, even though they weren't starting, they were getting to play every week because we had JV football games. It's a big part of our program. It's an important element of what we do. And yet it's had to change some of the ways we coach, some of the ways we structure the schedule along the way. Similarly, that first year, and this has been a big reason for the growth of the program as well, a few of the parents of captains came to me and said, hey, what could we do to create some energy around football? Again, we were down to 33 guys. And I said, well, I don't know. What about making the game day experience a little bit better? Let's come in and do a pregame meal. And back then, we played almost all Saturday games when we were at home. And so for the 6 Saturdays that we were at home, or 5 Saturdays that we were home, we came in, we had a meal together, we created this thing called Mission Period, and the captain's parents managed that. Of course, things evolve. And over time, the list that's on the screen up there are all things that over the last several years, our captain's parents have added, brought to the table, and managed. We do a kickoff decal ceremony in August. We have snacks for the team in the locker room. We have food post-game. We do things, we do a massive banquet at the end of the season. And all of those items and the long list that I put up on the screen, those have all been managed by captain's parents. Obviously, the goal is to make this a great experience. It goes back to, we want this to be the best team experience any of us have had. And I'm really proud of what that's become. At the same time, I'm also very much aware that we may need to tweak the model a little bit so that we're not asking so much of so few in terms of planning all of this work. So the way we've done this in the past, and Coach, if you go to the next slide, that would be great, thank you. How do we achieve all of this? Well, from a nuts and bolts, we've had a parent contribution that we've asked for at the beginning of the year. The senior captain's parents have managed it. Last year, we added the concession stand into the equation, right, in order to help cover the banquet, and that was only mid-season. And then on top of that, we've had a couple of other ideas that we've thought about using as we go forward. I say all of this because, number one, I think it's important when our parents do reach out and ask for that we know what everyone is doing in the course of the season and how much goes into it. But I also would like us to pay attention because our goal is to present some new models of how we do this and ask for some involvement from parents across grade levels. And I think in the perfect world, we would get to a point, and this is, again, perfect world, where we don't have senior captain parents working in a concession stand while their son's on the field for his last game. And that happened a little bit last year. So just as a coach and someone who's so excited about all that we've done and is so appreciative because we've had, I could go through a list of captains' parents who've made an unbelievable impact in our program. And yet at the same time, I think finding some ways in which we share that responsibility is very important to what we do. So I would ask you to look for some communications over the next month. And if you are interested in getting involved when those communications come, I would encourage you to do so. Are there any questions on that? And we have several captains' parents in here. Is there anything you think I've missed in talking about those issues? Okay, thank you. I have a few final reminders for varsity. Thank you, Coach. You received an email today with two items. One is a link to the team shop through BSN. That's open through next Monday. I want to emphasize, you do not have to buy all kinds of gear on the team shop. It's there for you, and I know many of you will, and that's awesome. And I'm glad you use that as a way to get U.S. football gear. But I also don't want someone who's new to us thinking, I got to buy 10 things off the team shop. No. Hey, it's there for you to look at. What you do need to make sure you have is the girdle pads for practice. If you're new to the program, we're offering the Q collar through the team shop this year. And I will say, and I know some players are more comfortable than others wearing the Q collar. If you already have yours, you don't need a new one. That lasts for you. The Q collar is the only FDA-approved device for dealing with subconcussive contact on a football, lacrosse, or soccer field. There are some anecdotal studies about limited concussion, and I will tell you from our experiences, again, there are exceptions, but the players who've worn them have had less severe and less concussions. Again, there are exceptions to this. We've certainly had guys who've worn a Q collar who've had a concussion, so I don't want to present it as a cure, but I will say across other programs that use it, you'll notice if you watch Ohio State, there's a lot of guys wearing a Q collar. You're starting to see them in the NFL. It's now become very common. I strongly recommend it. I think it's one additional thing we do to make a violent sport a little safer. Also at practice, we wear the Guardian caps. So those are two things that we do on that front. So team shop, girdles, and Q collars. And then I strongly recommend having at least one set of shorts and t-shirt that you use as workout gear. Coach Alvarez is very much partial to the idea that you wear black in the weight room and that it be U.S. gear. Do not walk into the weight room wearing blue. Look, I mean, I'll probably, be somewhat nice and just, hey, don't do that again, because I know that 30 seconds later, Coach Alvarez might devour you, and that you'll no longer be wearing blue in the weight room, but you might no longer exist, okay? So that's the team shop. I also attached a flyer from University Hospitals on physicals. Listen, I want to be clear. I want you to go to your normal pediatrician for your quality physical. Hey, get the good one, okay? But please, use the UH program to get your OHSAA form finished so that you're not scrambling around figuring out the calendar of what's 1 year from the last physical that you've had, and then all of a sudden you're scrambling the week before the season to get a physical because your last one expired. Okay? And those physicals at UH take place last week of May, early June at different sites around greater Cleveland. It's so easy to do it that way, and it's taken care of. And so I strongly recommend that as a way to ensure that you're not looking to do this at the last minute when you get to August and we're chasing you down. There is a wonderful story in our first year. We had 2 young men who came to practice without their physical on the first day. And they can't practice. But what they could do is flip a tire. And they flipped a tire for the whole of 2 practices. And it's funny, they got the physical the next day. They found a way. And they have a lifelong aversion to tires, which is wonderful. From a varsity football standpoint, are there any questions? And again, we have a lot of veterans in the room. Is there anything you think I've missed before I invite you guys to head out and let the freshmen stick around for a few more minutes? Please don't hesitate also. Everyone has my cell. Every email, my cell is the number that's at the bottom. Hey, feel free to call. And that really leads to the last point I would make from a general program standpoint. I'm a parent. You're parents, and obviously you have sons in the room. We've all had a moment where we think something's not right for our child. Okay? And I respect it, and I know it from experience as a parent. And there are a few thoughts that I have on that. Number one, reach out. Hey, give me a phone call, hopefully not 10 minutes after a game. Give it a day. But if you think there's an issue, please reach out. And I will always listen to a conversation about your son. Hey, but let's make certain it's always about your son and not someone else's who's not in the conversation. And number two, please remember, and this goes back to the competitiveness of everyone involved. We all want university school football to be as successful as it can be. And our goal is that pursuit of a championship. If we're making a decision, one of the greatest challenges in coaching is that many times, if I've made a decision that's, this young man plays, this young man doesn't, I may really like the young man who's not playing. I may think he's a great young man. I might think he's worked very hard. And yet my responsibility is to 70 young men in our program and not always the one. And of course, your responsibility is to the one. And I respect it and I understand it because I've been on the other side of it. And yet I just would share to keep that perspective in mind when we have the conversation. And again, those are never easy, but I always respect when parents come to me, but I hope you respect also that our coaches, our players are also trying to do the best for the whole as well. So those are my main thoughts. Let me just close with one last repetition. This will be an incredible experience if we walk away from it saying, that's the best team experience of my life to this point. And it prepares us to be parts of even better teams going forward. If we do that, we will have achieved brotherhood. And we will be very well on our way to having a very successful 135th season of university school football. Thank you all for being here. I'll ask freshman families to stay. We'll give varsity families a minute to leave, and we'll get going.